Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ian Schofield, and I'm a Solutions Architect here at AWS, and I'll be your speaker and moderator for today's webinar, Sigstr's Tale of Building Customer Trust and Winning Business Through Security with ThreatStack on AWS. What makes security so hard in a traditional environment? If you think about a data center, how do you keep track of everything that's in that data center? Do you have a real-time list of every server in that data center, where it exists, and all the metadata surrounding that server? Or if you unplug the server, do you know who owns it or how to log into it? This is a borderline impossible task to keep this list updated and accurate at all times. With the cloud, you have a single API call to show you all your instances and all the associated metadata. And if we think about this data center, we don't have a way to track every single action that occurs within this environment. If someone unplugs a server or a network cable, or even adds a server, we can't trace these individual actions. This is where services like CloudTrail come into play. CloudTrail provides a record of everything that happens within your environment. Every API call is tracked. It doesn't matter if it's something as small as disconnecting a network interface or something that might need diving into, like opening up a rule on a security group or deleting an EBS volume. With CloudTrail, you have this complete audit trail of your environment. And due to these processes being API-driven, we can now wrap up automation around these actions. We can use things like config rules or CloudWatch events to trigger based off actions detected by CloudTrail or automatically remediate actions like opening a security group to the world. And because of this, customers choose AWS to run their most critical and sensitive workloads. For example, FINRA states that their security in AWS is superior to their on-premises data center across various dimensions. Other companies like Slack, DNA Nexus, Capital One, and many others have expressed similar sentiments. In combination with the native offerings provided by AWS, and the solutions that our APN partners like ThreatStack, our customers can confidently operate their environments securely within AWS. Here we have a quote from the analyst at Gartner. What this is saying is that organizations need to move beyond their concerns around security in the cloud and start working towards figuring out how they can evolve and improve their security on AWS. At times, customers take a migration into AWS as an opportunity to rethink how they do security based on the new tools and approaches that are available to them. With AWS, you have the ability to have a new level of visibility and automation that helps you to ensure that you are able to implement the necessary security controls at the pace and scale of cloud computing and respond to them in an automated fashion. This helps to ensure that your security teams are able to protect and support your organization at scale. This not only refers to building and adopting your own tools, but also looking at what partner solutions will enable you to address the unique features of cloud computing and ensures that your security can keep up. Security at AWS is our top priority. We listen closely to our customers to offer both a secure cloud computing environment as well as innovative security services to meet the security and compliance needs of the most risk-sensitive organizations. Today, AWS protects millions of active customers around the world. Our customers represent diverse industries with a wide range of use cases, including large enterprises, startups, educational institutions, and government organizations. The scale and global reach of these customers gives us broad visibility and deep perspective on cloud security, giving us knowledge which we rapidly reinvest back into our infrastructure and services. And security at AWS starts with our core infrastructure. Our infrastructure is custom built for the cloud and designed to meet the most stringent security requirements in the world. It is monitored 24/7 to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all of our customers' data. The same world-class security experts who monitor this infrastructure also build and maintain our broad selection of security services, which can help you simplify meeting your own security and regulatory requirements. As an AWS customer, regardless of your size or investment, you automatically inherit all the benefits of our experience, tested against the strictest of third-party assurance frameworks. And with AWS and our partner solutions, you can automate security and compliance tasks to reduce your risk so you can grow and innovate faster, freeing up resources to focus on your customers and your core business needs. AWS regularly achieves third-party validation for thousands of global compliance requirements that we continually monitor to help meet security and compliance standards for finance, retail, healthcare, government, and many others. You inherit the latest security controls operated by AWS, strengthening your own compliance and certification programs. You also have access to tools that you can use to reduce your cost and time to run your own specific security assurance requirements. AWS supports more security standards and compliance certifications than any other offering, including PCI DSS, HIPAA, HITECH, FedRAMP, SEC Rule 17A4, EU Data Protection Directive, and FISMA, helping satisfy compliance requirements for virtually every regulatory agency around the globe. With AWS, you control where your data is stored, who can access it, and what resources your organization is consuming at any given moment. You have the ability to implement fine-grained access controls, in addition to continuous monitoring for near real-time security information. This ensures that the right resources have the right access at all times, wherever your information is stored. You can reduce risk as you scale by using our security automation and activity monitoring services, such as AWS CloudTrail, AWS Config, Amazon GuardDuty, and many others, as well as partner solutions such as ThreatStack, to detect suspicious security events like configuration changes across your ecosystem. You can even integrate our services with your existing solutions to support existing workflows, streamline your operations, and simplify compliance reporting. AWS is vigilant about your privacy. Because our customers care deeply about data security, we have a world-class team of security experts monitoring our systems 24/7 to protect your content. With AWS, you can build on the most secure global infrastructure, knowing we always own your data, including the ability to encrypt it, move it, and manage retention. We provide tools that allow you to easily encrypt your data in transit and at rest to help ensure that only authorized users can access it, using keys managed by our AWS Key Management Service, or KMS. With that, I'll now be followed by Chris Ford from ThreatStack and Sam Smith from Sigstr, who will tell you more about their platform and how they work together.
So hi everyone, great to be here with you today. My name is Chris Ford and I look after the product organization here at ThreatStack. I'll start by sharing a little bit about ThreatStack and we'll talk more later in the presentation about who we are and what we do. Essentially, ThreatStack helps growth-driven companies like Sigstr scale their business in a secure way. We do this using a highly automated, scalable cloud SecOps platform that allows you to monitor and fortify infrastructure to reduce the threat surface over time. Now, our platform is very tightly integrated with AWS, so you can leverage all the great tools that Ian talked about previously. For our customers who are strapped in terms of resources and expertise, we do also augment our customers' teams with cloud SecOps engineers that help them on their cloud security journey, whether it's baselining their current level of maturity with respect to cloud security, setting security goals, or even providing analytics and insights that help them prioritize their efforts in terms of getting to great when it comes to security. Now, using these tools, we help customers unify both the security and operations teams, and I think most importantly, we help them use security as a differentiator in the market. I'm super excited for you to hear from one of our customers today. I think Sam's experience on his journey is going to be really beneficial to everyone here in the audience, whether you're just getting started or like some tips on how to build security into your culture. Sam?
Yeah, hi everybody, this is Sam. I'm the Chief Architect with Sigstr, and if you haven't heard of us before, we are a marketing company, a marketing product, and we build and offer an email signature marketing platform, might be a new term for some, that helps marketers and businesses standardize and leverage the corporate email signature as a new marketing channel. So we offer a wide range of integrations that play directly with customers' email environments to help them achieve brand compliance as far as signatures go, and then to help them receive and deliver ROI by marketing through their employees.
Thank you, Sam, and glad to have you with us today. Before we start to talk about this journey that you've been on, I think it would help our audience if you baselined a bit about your infrastructure and why security is so critical. Can you talk us through the touch points that you have with your customers' tech stacks and how you interface with their data?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we wouldn't be here today, right, if we weren't hosting our solution on AWS and weren't having it protected by ThreatStack as well. So, the integrations that we offer play directly in the customer's email stack. So we have things that integrate directly with G Suite and with APIs that Google operates, Chrome extensions that we put into the browser. We have client-side integrations that work directly with email clients through software distribution channels. And then we also operate our own email infrastructure that some customers leverage. So, every day, the types of data points that we're looking at, we're consuming and processing data about our customers' employees. So we do that for the purpose of providing email signatures. So things like names, job titles, phone numbers, anything that might be stored in an HRIS or an Active Directory system. And then we also touch data about our customers' customers. So, we offer a platform for marketers, and they're managing audience lists and segments across different marketing automation platforms. So we deal with that data as well. And then obviously being in the flow of email in some cases, we also touch one of the things that is the most secure thing that customers look to protect, and that is their corporate email.
Well, I can certainly see why your customers are so concerned around security. Let's drill into that for a couple minutes if we can. Before we do, though, can I ask, how has your role evolved in your time at Sigstr? Were you always responsible for security?
It didn't actually start out that way. So my background is in software engineering, and when I started with Sigstr, I was our first engineer building out our initial roadmap and our initial platform offerings. Over time, I kind of started growing that team in more of a leadership role. That team is now fully autonomous, and they're doing bigger and better things every day. So today, I think it's typical for the security role to kind of fall into the lap of people in engineering or IT. So that was kind of natural for me to pick up as we went. But today, I get to focus on technically making sure that our platform is providing the right solutions for customers, and that we're also being transparent in our communication about our security stance. So, security wasn't something that I thought out of the gates we were going to have to do as quickly as we did. But I think we kind of took this attitude of being able to see our own security posture as a differentiator in the market, and it was something that the business needed us to focus on.
Yeah, I think your story is very common. We see that a lot. Ultimately, with growth-driven companies like Sigstr, security falls by default to engineering and operations teams. So this slide, we wanted to talk about your customer's perspective on security. So we have a couple questions. First, how often does this come up in your engagement with customers?
I would say at this point, just about every customer, every prospect that we talk to wants to hear at least a little bit about our security posture, our practices, and part of that is due to just kind of the upstream position that we take selling to the enterprise. But it's a typical day around here if we don't get at least a few questions.
And specifically, what's most important to them? What kinds of things are you being asked for?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different buckets that falls into, at least as far as the common things go. So from a data privacy standpoint, customers want to know what data points does Sigstr have access to? Which of those that come through our system do we actually store and persist? They want to know how we protect that data through our infrastructure. And then the infrastructure itself is the other bucket. Customers want to know how the infrastructure itself is secured and what our policies for change management are, and how we protect the things that are doing the processing with data within the cloud.
So I'm guessing your customers won't take your word for it. How do you satisfy those queries around specifically data protection and monitoring of infrastructure?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can always talk to it, but the proof is what really helps make people feel comfortable. So the types of things at this point that people are asking for, are things like some kind of third-party compliance attestation. And there's all kinds of those, right? We saw the slide just a few minutes ago with everything under the sun that AWS has. We chose to look at SOC 2 compliance specifically for our business. There's also a hot topic now with about a month deadline to go coming up with GDPR going into effect. So customers are certainly wanting to know how we look at data privacy as it relates to those changes, and what we're doing with our product to help meet those needs.
Well, GDPR is top of mind for a lot of the folks on the call today, I'm sure. Now, you mentioned earlier about using security as a differentiator. So how do you exceed your customer expectations and begin to go beyond compliance to really make your offer different using security?
Yeah, obviously there's the things that you have to do to implement certain security controls, of course. What I find that helps us go a little bit above and beyond is a bit more focused on soft skills actually. So just being able, right, when we're talking to a customer or a prospect about their security concerns, being able to demonstrate just a little bit of awareness or maybe empathy for their position. It's easy to think of getting grilled with a really heavy procurement process as kind of an attack on what you do, but being able to realize that there is another human being on the other side of the phone here. And their job is to protect the integrity of the organization that they work for. So just being able to recognize that it goes a long way. And then, just kind of a core value of ours as a business in being transparent and timely with our communication. We've gotten a lot of kudos from other security and procurement teams for just being able to turn around question answers really quickly because they're used to that being a drawn out process. So it can be kind of a bit of fresh air if we prioritize that and get back to people quickly. And then, of course, over time, right, we're always evolving our security practices. And so we want to make sure that we follow up with customers as those things are changing so that we can demonstrate, right, that we're growing and we're maturing a little bit over time. And then, of course, using well-known tools is certainly a big help for us, right, when people see that we host on AWS. Or that we have Threat Stack monitoring our infrastructure. Those are well-known brands that people recognize and just immediately out of the gate understand the value that we're getting from those platforms.
Cool, thanks, Sam. I think we can certainly agree on the use of well-established tools. But I really liked your comment about transparency. I think ultimately when you're building empathy and trust, customers are looking for a partner who can help them understand where they are, be open about it, and be proactive about risk. All right, well, so we've talked about security and the concerns that you're hearing in the marketplace. I'd like to focus next on how your security practice evolved at Sigstr. So where did you start? Was security a consideration when you chose AWS? And what was the point at which you really started to think about security?
Yeah, so obviously from ground from day one, right, as a startup, security may not necessarily be the thing that you think about the most. It was always kind of there in the back of our minds, but when it's early on and you've got a huge product roadmap and lots of ideas to execute on, it's easy to let some of those things slip through the cracks. When we got up and running with AWS, that was an easy decision for us. Obviously AWS itself has the ability to protect the cloud as we operate in it, and then it's up to us to make sure that we're securing our use of our product within the cloud. But just things like AWS having their own security compliance attestation, having a documented, if you guys haven't seen it, there's a documented best practice security document from AWS that talks about all the easy things that you can do to follow their standards. Made it really easy for us to adopt that early on and put some of those controls into place from the ground up. And I think that kind of made it easy for us early on to make that choice as to where to host.
Did you find any low-hanging fruit in terms of things you could do right away to secure Sigstr once you were up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's easy things to do. If it just required a little bit of forethought for us about where we were going and how the product was going to evolve. So, I mean, things like being able to use separate AWS accounts for your staging infrastructure versus your production infrastructure. That means you've out of the box got two different sets of access rules and credentials that eliminate kind of a single point of failure. You want to make sure that we were configuring VPCs appropriately and that we had infrastructure segregated the right amount, and then leveraging things like security group controls to make sure that we're standardizing the way those things can be accessed both outside our infrastructure and internally as well. And just philosophically, one thing really early on that we had seen success with in other lives previous was just this idea of only granting access to people and to systems as needed. That goes a long way into making sure that if we're onboarding new engineers or new DevOps folks, that they have the ability to control what they need to, and then nothing else risky beyond that. And the same goes for systems that we provision, right? So making sure that if we're building, an internal worker queue, that it doesn't necessarily need to be public facing, or just making sure that those systems have access to talk to each other and nothing else that might pose a threat.
Well, sounds like a great place to start. I'm glad you brought up the published best practices as well. That's something we recommend to our customers to leverage the tools that are available from AWS. And in fact, our customers obviously use ThreatStack to audit configuration of their services and monitor changes to infrastructure so they can make sure that they're following those best practices. All right, so let's jump into our time machine here and move to the next step in your journey. Once you got up and running on AWS, what are some of the initial pains that you had to overcome to go from where you started to where you are today?
Yeah, so we set up the product, right? We started onboarding our first few customers. We're getting up and running, getting a little confidence in the business. And we kind of made this shift. We always knew we wanted to focus on the enterprise. And so we started, once we got around maybe 25, 30 customers, we started to shift our focus, at least as far as sales that way. And that's really when, the focus on security really came into view for us and made us realize how much customers really do want to dig into that, at least as it relates to their corporate email and data privacy. So, as soon as we started going upstream, we start running into longer procurement cycles from enterprise customers. We start running into big, long security questionnaires that they send over to us. The Excel spreadsheets with hundreds of questions that all align to certain types of compliance. But everybody's unique. Everybody's got their own procurement procedures that they go through. And so it was really interesting for us to see, how much paperwork can go into that. But then also once you do enough of it, you start to recognize some patterns and that there are important things that all customers focus on. And so that was really unique for us to see. And then also, on Sigstr is a very sales-led organization. Our sales team is growing very quickly. And so for us, when we're entering into a bigger market and growing the team at the same time, one of our internal challenges was figuring out how to make sure that we can enable our sales team to be able to speak to some of those questions and then some of those topics in a meaningful way, right? If you've got the sales team that is not technical or has never, had to have those conversations before, it can be a daunting topic to talk about. So that was a challenge for us too, to make sure we did some internal enablement so that customers can get the answers that they need from our team.
Got it. We were just chuckling over here. We're no stranger to the 1,000-line spreadsheets. I can appreciate how big a burden that is on your organization, as well as a friction point, honestly, to closing business. You talked about moving into a larger market. Any reflections on how the demands changed as you began to go up market?
Yeah, I think it was just really interesting to see the demands that came in from customers kind of dragged us into maturing on our own as well. Because those were, when you're in the long tail segment of the business, you can run into maybe folks that don't have dedicated IT teams internally, maybe don't have dedicated security teams internally. And the types of questions that you get in that case are very high level and really don't go into detail. When we started going upstream like that, not only is there the paperwork aspect of it, but folks want to see network diagrams. They want to see architecture diagrams so that their teams can understand the way that we work and the way data flows through our system. So I would say the biggest thing there going forward was really just a level of detail into those conversations that we hadn't seen before.
Got it. And so what must have been challenging as well is the more and more burden that's placed on your organization, security questionnaires you had to answer. How did you balance between solving for some of those security requests and actually continuing to build features that your customers were looking for in the market?
Yeah, that can be a tough thing to balance. I think mentally it was important for us to try to look at the security conversations we were having with customers as more of an opportunity and not necessarily a burden or a slowdown for our sales team. So being able to look at requests that were coming in and really treat those as if they were almost features on our roadmap, so that we could make sure that they were documented and the team understood why they were building them. And then we can execute on them appropriately and prioritize them the right way. So really for us, kind of developing our security roadmap and making sure that we balanced that against the actual product and platform that we were building. What was really important to make sure that we kept things moving through the pipe as best we could. And along with that, right, as we were looking at documentation and these questionnaires from customers, we started picking out, the similarities between all of those things. So being able to look at the common questions that the customers were really asking us about and the ones that they really cared about the most, that kind of led us to generating our own homegrown policies to help communicate that. I mentioned documentation earlier, right? People not only want you to answer their questions, but they want to see the documentation that you have about your own processes. So being able to consolidate kind of the patterns that we saw into our own initial information security program what was really important for us to help communicate that.
Outstanding. So your teams are growing, you're moving up market, you're able to handle security requests as they come in as part of your product roadmap. Can you talk more about what came next? What were the big friction points? How did you react to that as a company as you started to grow in this way?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of the steps we were taking were definitely positives for customers, that we were meeting demands as they came in. We're implementing the right security controls. And our goals for all of that never really changed. We want to make sure we deliver a world-class platform, a world-class product. And we want to do that so that we can support our sales team here and grow the business as fast as we can. But really, as we as a company matured, the ways that we approach that also did. So we decided to bring in dedicated DevOps team to help manage our AWS infrastructure in a more standardized way. We obviously went out and adopted ThreatStack as part of requests from customers for specific features that we were implementing, and we can definitely talk about those as well. And then, one of the biggest things that we did recently as an organization was actually to commit some resources and intent to becoming SOC 2 compliant. And that was a big shift for us because we had a lot of customers asking for it. But when you're a young business, you kind of have that decision to make about when the time is right. And we felt that at this stage it was good to snap the chalk line and say this is what we're going to go for.
Very cool. So both your choice in tools and your decision to go for SOC 2 are things I think everyone would benefit from. Let's start with tools. First of all, it's great that you could build such awareness and strategic importance behind security. So congratulations. I know it's hard, especially when you're in hyper growth mode. I'm guessing, at least early on, your budget for tooling was fairly limited. How did you decide when to build versus buy a solution for tooling?
Yeah. Early on, the budget can be a big constraint. We started to look at some of those common questions that people were asking for, things like intrusion detection, things like file monitoring, alerting around security events in our infrastructure. So we started kind of consolidating those things and just kind of, evaluating, is there a thing that we can build in-house? Is there a thing that we can go out to get for each one of these needs? Or is there an overall platform that helps support all of it? The other half of that consideration is that we're a young, small company at the time. We don't have dedicated security experts on staff. So internally, right, we might not have the right guidance. And, at the time, I mentioned budget being a constraint. At the time for us, we were hot off of a Series A fundraise. So obviously there's money burning hole in a pocket there, and we want to make sure we put that to the best use as we can. So, buying seemed like the right thing to do, given the different types of problems that we wanted to solve. And when we took a look at ThreatStack, it was pretty clear that it was going to help us meet a lot of those needs.
But just for context, can you share with the audience what sorts of solutions you did look at and what sorts of capabilities were important to you in making that choice?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first thoughts we had was let's look at a managed security service provider. And we felt that that case might be a little too expensive for what we were doing at the time. Might be a little overkill based on the types of threats that we thought we were open to. We also looked at open source tools, OSIM tools that could do basic detection, basic alerting. One of the shortcomings there that we found was that we can get we can set something up open source that can do all the alerting that we need. But then we're kind of left at a point where we're not really sure how critical these things are, and we're not really sure how best to address them ourselves. So, just being able to go one step further and know the why behind certain vulnerabilities was a big bonus for us. So, we looked at Threat Stack, obviously because you guys have a great integration with AWS. So that made it easy for us to get implemented and get up and running. We got limited DevOps resources, so the faster we can do that, the faster we can get to other stuff. Obviously, Threat Stack has really good built-in compliance rule sets. So as we're looking at SOC 2 compliance, right, we need to be able to provide evidence and proof that the controls we have are in place and that they're working. And Threat Stack provides a SOC 2 rule set specifically that helps us keep an eye on the security events and the configurations that we need to within our infrastructure. And then, from a customer request standpoint, right, the things I mentioned earlier, intrusion detection, file integrity monitoring, and then just alerts around the security events in our infrastructure was just all table stakes, but with the Threat Stack offering.
Well, thanks for that, Sam. I think you called out leveraging expertise as one of the reasons why you decided to move away from an open source option, and we see that an awful lot. So you're armed and dangerous with new tools now. You've got visibility across your infrastructure, and you're able to satisfy more of your customer requests around security. What's next for you?
Yeah, so next for us, right, is making this decision to go for SOC 2, and that compliance is a goal of ours for 2018. And we have obviously there are customers that are asking for it, and it seems to be a solid standard that a lot of SaaS companies are going for today. But we also have this hypothesis behind it that this is something that could help us reduce time in our sales cycles. It could help drive revenue within the business. And so we wanted to make sure that as we went for that the business as a whole kind of understood why we were looking for compliance.
Well, having been through SOC 2 Type 2 ourselves, I know it can be daunting. I'm sure everybody would benefit from hearing how you approached it and your experience as you're going for SOC 2. How did you approach it? Any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking that, compliance is something you can just write a check for and go out and get on a weekend. So there was a little bit of education that we had to do cross-functionally around the business, just to educate about what compliance is and the level of time and effort that it will take across a lot of different departments. So there were challenges like, who are we going to get to help us with this? So we had to go out and find the right CPA firm. We found one that only employs security experts, and this kind of compliance auditing is the only thing that they do. So that's really helpful, right? They're kind of our consultant and our guide along the journey to help us through gap analysis and shoring up all the things that we need to do to become compliant and then prove it. Internally for us as well, we made a decision to appoint a data privacy officer. And so that's an individual now that owns the security aspect of our business, owns that communication, and then helps project manage our own compliance efforts. And one of the things that really helped as we've been going through this so far is we actually got what's called a letter of intent from our auditor, and it basically says, it's got their letterhead. It says, hey, this is Sigstr. Here's what we're doing for them. They've committed to resources. Here's the timeline. And just being able to share something like that with our customers and prospects really helps provide a little bit of trust around, how dedicated we are to actually doing this.
I think that's great that you're able to communicate out your intentions around SOC 2. Was there any impact on your organization? So focus more internally. How did the team react when you started talking about the movement towards SOC 2 compliance?
It was honestly a little bit mixed. We had some new folks, some younger folks that had never been through or never worked at a business that had been compliant before and really didn't know, just needed some education around what that meant. And then we've got veterans, that have been around the block a few times and have been through things like PCI and ISO compliance, and so kind of knew exactly what to expect. I think one of the biggest things, and this kind of goes back to the security roadmap point I made earlier, one of the biggest things that helped to get everyone on board was just realizing, or rather communicating our idea that, if we go out and get this, it's going to help our sales team move faster. It's going to help us close deals. And that means that everybody here wins in a bigger way. So being able to look at compliance as an opportunity rather than a burden and a slowdown on the business was definitely a good mind shift to get into.
Yeah, for sure. As I said, we've been through SOC 2 and we're compliant. It certainly does help to accelerate our sales process and demonstrate our commitment to security. We've also seen some really interesting internal benefits as well, from stronger SecOps processes to more efficiency when it comes to responding to those security assessments coming in. We've seen a lot of benefit in terms of our speed and our ability to react to customers. Cool. So fast forward to today, you've got tools in place, you're going for SOC 2. How has the market responded? Are you seeing positive outcomes from your decision to go down this path?
Yeah, we definitely are. Internally, I think there's an increased confidence around our ops and engineering teams, right? We have better visibility. We have a better handle on what's happening in our environment. And then the rest of the business, feels empowered because of that. They feel like we've got a handle on things and that we can address customer concerns or security events as they come up. So there's definitely an overarching feel of confidence there internally. Candidly, after we had made this decision, we got a little feedback from our board of directors, and they were actually really glad that we had made the decision to go for compliance as early as we have, because they've seen cases with bigger, more mature businesses that they've invested in. That when it's a bigger ship like that, it can be harder to course correct, and they've seen more mature businesses struggle and take a little bit longer to do it. So. It's always great to get validation from upon high in that way. And then obviously, just having the ability to see all the different things that ThreatStack gives us access to just really increases visibility and confidence with our own teams.
Well, Sam, I really appreciate your sharing your experience as you grew your security practice at Sigstr. It's really impressive what you've been able to do. Are there any key takeaways that you'd like to leave with the audience today? Any final thoughts on your experience as you've grown your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our kind of core value of transparency has served us really well. And so I would say if you're early in the journey or talking about security, don't be afraid to be transparent with customers. Our expectation is that we will be open as much as we can. And our hope is that when we talk about security and our infrastructure, the customers will give us positive feedback and help us grow as best we can. Leveraging well-known standards, well-known logos, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So again, when folks see that we run on AWS and we're covered with ThreatStack, they immediately understand kind of the value that's there and what that means. Over time, as we've gone, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to continue putting security features into part of our product and platform roadmap. That just really helps us make sure that we're staying on top of the latest trends and prioritizing the next things that we need to do to keep growing over time. Obviously, if you're in really early stages, try to document your policies, your practices. It's kind of similar to engineers and developers maybe not wanting to write comments in code all the time. As you're trying to build a business, you maybe don't want to write down all the policies because they might change. But having that written down early for us made it easier to communicate it to customers for sure. And then when going for compliance, don't treat it as a silo, right? Try to make sure that the business as a whole understands the goals and the outcomes that you're looking for, and having cross-functional buy-in will make that a lot easier to manage.
Well, thank you, Sam. Again, great insights, and I'd like to take a minute to thank our partners at AWS for helping bring this webinar together. Again, as Ian pointed out at the top of the call, there are some handouts available if you'd like to learn more about Sigstr's journey with ThreatStack. Here's a quick note on some more details with respect to the ThreatStack offer. At ThreatStack, we provide a single platform that provides continuous visibility into cloud infrastructure. To start, we help customers scan AWS configurations to ensure they're following published best practices. We also provide real-time insights into behaviors on the host with vulnerability assessments and threat intel to provide a holistic view of risk across infrastructure. When you combine that with compliance-oriented rule sets and workflow integration, we help customers maintain and improve compliance and work proactively to reduce the threat surface over time. With that, Ian, I guess I'll send it back to you for some Q&A.
Perfect. So thanks, Chris and Sam. I appreciate it. We're now going to transition into the live Q&A portion. So the first question we have is, when is the right time to go for SOC 2 compliance, and how mature does a company have to be? So Chris, having gone through this process, what are your thoughts here?
Well, my first thought is that it's never too early to get started. Obviously, you have to balance security needs versus your business needs when you're rolling out a new service and a new offer. But as Sam pointed out, the more mature you get, I think in some cases, the harder it is to implement best practices and go for SOC 2. So we recommend starting early. And as Sam pointed out, it's useful to find the right partner to help you with the journey and also identify the right tools that can help you get started much more quickly.
Perfect. So next question we have is, where can I get a copy of the best practices for security on AWS? And so this, I'd say a good starting point would be the AWS Security Best Practices White Paper. And you can find this on the AWS website. And this is going to give you a background into what are some of the AWS services that you can use and leverage in these situations, things like CloudTrail, things like config, IAM, and the best practices around using those individual services. I'd also ask you to check out the AWS Security blog, where there are other SAs and technical account managers and people from AWS support, all contributing content to provide guidance, recommendations, sample solutions, and other content. And if you have any other questions outside that aren't answered in those documents, I invite you to make a post on our AWS forums or reach out to your AWS account team, and they can provide you some additional information. We also have this Learn More slide here, which someone just switched over to. Perfect timing. Has a lot of these other collateral that's not provided by AWS but by ThreatStack, which can point you in the right direction. Chris, did you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add one thing to that. It's useful to point out that a lot of folks use tools like ThreatStack to supplement what they get from AWS in order to identify whether or not they're following best practices. So these are great resources to learn more, but tools can also help you make sure that you're following those best practices.
Definitely. So the next question we have is for Sam. How large was your team when you started dedicating resources to compliance? And did you have a separate DevOps team for security specifically?
At that time for commitment, yes, we did have a couple dedicated DevOps resources. The decision to appoint a data privacy officer kind of happened at the same time because we want to make sure that there was someone who could own that process across the business. Overall, number-wise, I think Sigstr was about 45 employees when we made that call. We're just around 55 right now. Our engineering team was probably about 10 members in total. So certainly not the biggest company on the block, but it was also not the first thing that we did right out of the gate.
Got it. And it looks like we have another question. How did you guys select the audit firm to go through your SOC 2 review?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had, so Sigstr is part of a community of startups here in Indianapolis, and we had a couple other sister companies that had started going through the same process as well. So we looked to them, right? We looked to our neighbors for a little bit of help and guidance as to who they went with. Things that we looked for in an auditor that helped us pick were just the ability to consult, right? We wanted to make sure that it's not just someone who's going to come in and blindly tell us yes or no, are we compliant? We wanted someone that was easy to work with, who could help us talk through our concerns and the gaps that we needed to shore up. And then someone who could offer the tools that would really help us kind of manage that process. Everybody does it differently. You can manage that in-house through something like Jira if you want to. A lot of auditors have their own processes that they help people go through. So trying to find the one that had the best process that made sense for us and that was easy to work with really helped us narrow it down.
Perfect. And just a reminder for everyone, as we continue to go through the rest of these questions, if you do have questions, please feel free to put those into the chat so we can make sure that we answer those for you today. Next question we have is for Chris. When choosing a security tool, what are the benefits of a platform versus an MSSP?
Well, certainly, as we've heard today, security teams and ops teams can be very taxed, especially when there isn't a lot of resource or expertise available to them. MSSPs can help on that front. However, our view is that oftentimes an MSSP can be a jack of many trades, but master of none. With our Cloud SecOps program that we just introduced actually a few weeks ago, we're allowing our customers to extend their teams with both platforms, that's a technology, and some resources on our side that can help them get started, identify their relative maturity, and even help them gain insight into areas of risk they hadn't thought about. So that is a much more focused approach to mitigating risk, where you're working with individuals who have deep expertise on a certain technology that can help you really gain that insight. So I think what we're offering is the best of both worlds here, in that we provide both the platform technology and the resources to help take advantage of it.
Perfect. We have one more question here for Sam. Can you talk a little bit how you found the balance between going through your product roadmap and customer requests?
Yeah, absolutely. And this will dive a little bit into an engineering discussion. But so in general here, our engineering team and a lot of members around the business are focused on being as lean as we can. So there's a lot of people here. If you haven't read the Lean Startup, it's got a lot of philosophy that we adhere to. So things like when we're trying to decide how to prioritize or how to execute on a security request versus a product feature. For us, we try to turn that into something that fits into our DevOps and our engineering flow. So practicing single piece flow and just-in-time planning when those things come in really helped us be able to execute on that. And outside of the engineering details like that, it was as a startup, I think, helpful for us to be a little bit scrappy and build some of these things into our customer agreements early on. So hey customer, you've got really specific things that you want us to do and controls that you want us to implement. So we're going to make a commitment to you as part of our process that within a certain amount of time we're going to have those things implemented. And that just helps really, I think, foster relationships with customers that builds a little bit of trust and shows that we're here to serve them with a product and a service, but also to make them feel comfortable over time.
Perfect. Chris, we have a question for you. Can ThreatStack be integrated with SIEM to feed configuration issues into routine log reviews?
For sure. Actually, when using our platform, first off, we provide visibility into what's happening in your cloud infrastructure. But to make it actionable requires that you're integrated into existing tools and workflows that our customers already have. So short answer is yes, ThreatStack integrates with SIEM systems using either webhooks or RESTful APIs that we publish and our customers write to. That way it makes it easy for them to gather data from our platform, use it in reporting, triage, or even more proactive measures to remediate risk. Absolutely.
We want to thank everyone for attending today. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much.